Good evening. Welcome to the Midnight Deep. I'm Wade Hadley, your host. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey unlike any other. We're going to descend through the ocean, layer by layer, until we reach the deepest point on our planet, the Mariana Trench. A place where the pressure would crush nearly anything we know, where darkness is absolute, and where the temperature hovers just above freezing. Yet somehow, life persists. This is a story about extremes, about the remarkable adaptations of creatures living in conditions we can barely imagine, and about the raw power of our planet's geology. Before we ask where you're watching from, let me give you a taste of what's ahead. We'll pass through 5 distinct zones of the ocean, each with its own character, its own inhabitants, its own mysteries. We'll meet fish that glow in the dark, creatures that can withstand pressures over 1,000 times what we feel at sea level, and discover how the collision of massive tectonic plates created this 7-mile deep scar in the ocean floor. Let's dive in. Our journey begins at the surface, in what scientists call the epipelagic zone, though you might know it better as the sunlight zone. This layer extends from the ocean surface down to about 200 meters, roughly 650 feet. Here, sunlight penetrates the water, and this makes all the difference. The sun's rays allow photosynthesis to occur, which means microscopic plants called phytoplankton can grow. These tiny organisms form the foundation of the ocean's food web. Think of them as the grass of the sea, supporting everything above them in the chain. The epipelagic zone is where you'll find the ocean life you're most familiar with. Dolphins leap through these waters. Sharks patrol. Schools of tuna speed past. Sea turtles glide through. Even the massive whales spend most of their time here, coming up to breathe and often feeding near the surface. The water temperature varies widely depending on where you are on the planet. Near the equator, surface waters might reach 29 degrees Celsius, around 85 Fahrenheit. Near the poles, temperatures drop close to freezing. As we descend through this zone, you'd notice the light changing. Near the surface, the water might appear bright blue or green. But as you go deeper, colors begin to disappear. Red light is absorbed first, within just 10 meters of the surface. This is why everything looks blue or green when you're diving. Orange goes next, then yellow. By the time you reach 100 meters down, only blue and violet wavelengths remain, giving the water an increasingly dim, bluish cast. The pressure increases too, though not as dramatically as it will in the zones below. For every 10 meters you descend, the pressure increases by about 1 atmosphere. At the surface, you experience 1 atmosphere of pressure, the weight of all the air above you. At 10 meters depth, you experience 2 atmospheres, 1 from the air and 1 from the water. At 100 meters, 11 atmospheres push against you. For marine creatures here, this is nothing. They're built for it, their bodies in balance with the surrounding pressure. This zone represents only about 5% of the ocean's total volume, but it contains roughly 90% of all marine life. The abundance is staggering. Jellyfish drift with the currents, their translucent bodies pulsing gently. Flying fish break the surface to escape predators. Swordfish hunt with their distinctive bills. But as we prepare to leave the sunlight zone and enter the realm below, the character of the ocean is about to change dramatically. We're now crossing the boundary into the mesopelagic zone, often called the twilight zone. This layer extends from 200 meters down to about 1,000 meters, roughly 3,300 feet. The change is immediate and profound. Sunlight still reaches here, but barely. Only about 1% of surface light penetrates to the top of this zone, and that light fades rapidly as we descend. There's enough illumination for some creatures to see, but not enough for photosynthesis. Plants cannot survive here. The temperature drops noticeably as well. Near the top of the mesopelagic zone, around 500 to 800 meters down, there's a boundary called the thermocline. This is where water temperature drops off sharply, plunging from the warmer surface waters down to about 4 degrees Celsius, 39 Fahrenheit. Below the thermocline, temperatures stay relatively constant as we go deeper. The water here stays cold, hovering around 2 to 4 degrees. For reference, that's about the temperature inside your refrigerator. Despite the dim light and cold temperatures, the mesopelagic zone is far from empty. This zone actually occupies about 60% of the planet's surface and roughly 20% of the ocean's volume. It's enormous, and it hosts a remarkable array of life, though these creatures look and behave very differently from those in the sunlight zone above. The animals here have evolved to survive in perpetual twilight, and many have developed one of nature's most extraordinary adaptations. They make their own light. Bioluminescence, the ability to produce light through chemical reactions, is incredibly common in the mesopelagic zone. Studies using video observations found that roughly 76% of organisms in the water column between the surface and abyssal depths can produce bioluminescence. Think about that. 3 out of every 4 creatures you'd encounter here glow in the dark. They do this using chemical reactions involving molecules called luciferin and enzymes called luciferase. When these compounds mix with oxygen, they produce light with almost no heat. It's remarkably efficient. Different species use bioluminescence for different purposes. Some fish have light organs called photophores on their undersides. They adjust the brightness of these lights to match the faint glow filtering down from above. When a predator looks up from below, the fish becomes invisible, blending perfectly with the background light. This technique is called counterillumination, and it's like wearing an invisibility cloak. Other creatures use bioluminescence to find mates. Lanternfish have distinctive patterns of glowing spots that help males and females of the same species recognize each other in the darkness. Some predators use light as a lure. The dragonfish has a glowing barbel dangling beneath its chin, attracting smaller fish that come to investigate, only to be snapped up. And when threatened, some species release clouds of glowing chemicals into the water, like a luminous smoke bomb. This startles predators and gives the prey a chance to escape. Imagine a shrimp ejecting a burst of bright blue light directly into the face of a pursuing fish, then darting away while the predator's sensitive eyes are temporarily overwhelmed. Many animals in the twilight zone engage in what's called diel vertical migration. Each evening as darkness falls, millions of fish, squid, and crustaceans swim upward into the sunlight zone to feed. They spend the night there, taking advantage of the abundant food. Then, before dawn breaks, they descend back down into the safety of the twilight zone where they spend the day hidden from predators. This migration involves so many animals that during World War II, sonar operators regularly detected what appeared to be a false seafloor. They called it the deep scattering layer. It was actually billions of small fish and other creatures moving up and down through the water column each day, their swim bladders reflecting the sonar signals. At 1,000 meters, roughly 3,300 feet below the surface, we cross another boundary. We're entering the bathypelagic zone, commonly known as the midnight zone. The name tells you everything you need to know. Sunlight does not reach here. Not even the faintest glimmer. This is a realm of absolute darkness, broken only by the occasional flash of bioluminescence from the creatures that inhabit it. The bathypelagic zone extends from 1,000 meters down to 4,000 meters, about 13,000 feet. This is an enormous volume of water, making it the largest ecosystem on Earth. The zone is 15 times the size of the epipelagic zone above. In terms of sheer space, the midnight zone dominates our planet. Yet it remains one of the least explored environments. The pressure here is intense. At 1,000 meters, you're experiencing 100 atmospheres of pressure. At 4,000 meters, it's 400 atmospheres. That's 400 times the pressure you feel standing at sea level. Every square inch of your body would have nearly 3 tons pushing against it. The temperature is consistently cold, staying between 2 and 4 degrees Celsius throughout this zone. There are no seasonal changes, no daily temperature swings. The midnight zone is stable, unchanging, eternally dark and cold. Food is extremely scarce. With no plants growing here, all nutrition must come from above. Dead organisms and fecal matter slowly drift down from the upper zones, creating what scientists call marine snow. These tiny particles rain down constantly, though there's far less of it by the time it reaches these depths. Much has already been consumed by creatures living in the zones above. Because food is so limited, the animals here have evolved fascinating strategies to survive. Many species have extremely slow metabolisms, requiring very little energy to stay alive. Some can go weeks or even months between meals. When food does arrive, perhaps in the form of a dead whale carcass drifting down from above, it creates a feeding frenzy. Creatures from miles around somehow detect the bonanza and converge on it, stripping the remains clean over weeks or months. Predators in the midnight zone often have enormous mouths relative to their body size. The gulper eel, for instance, has a jaw that can unhinge and expand to swallow prey larger than itself. When you never know when your next meal is coming, it pays to be able to eat anything you encounter, regardless of size. Many fish here also have large, upward-facing eyes, optimized to detect any bioluminescent flashes above them. Some species have eyes with more light-gathering capability than any surface-dwelling fish, allowing them to see in conditions we would consider pitch black. Bioluminescence is still common here, though less so than in the twilight zone above. Approximately 25% of animals caught in nets from the bathypelagic zone are bioluminescent. The anglerfish is perhaps the most famous example. Female anglerfish have a modified spine extending from their head with a glowing lure at the tip. They wave this luminous bait to attract prey in the darkness. The males are tiny, often becoming parasitic and permanently attaching to the much larger females. Despite the harsh conditions, the midnight zone is home to a surprising variety of life. Giant squid patrol these waters, their large eyes adapted to detect the faint bioluminescence of prey. Grenadiers, also called rat-tail fish, cruise along the bottom, feeding on whatever they can find. Vampire squid drift through the darkness, their webbed arms spread wide like a cape, giving them their dramatic name. Each species has found its own way to thrive in this challenging environment. At 4,000 meters, about 13,000 feet or 2.5 miles down, we enter the abyssopelagic zone. The abyss. Here, the ocean floor begins in many areas, though we still have much further to go before reaching the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The abyssopelagic zone extends from 4,000 down to 6,000 meters, or roughly 13,000 to 20,000 feet deep. The pressure at 4,000 meters reaches 400 atmospheres. At 6,000 meters, it's 600 atmospheres. To put that in perspective, if you took an empty aluminum can and brought it down here, it would be crushed instantly into a compressed disk. The cold remains constant at 1 to 4 degrees Celsius. The darkness is absolute, and the food supply is more limited than ever. Only the smallest particles of marine snow make it this far down. The abyss makes up a significant portion of Earth's surface. Roughly 75% of the ocean floor lies at abyssal depths or deeper. Yet humans have explored only a tiny fraction of it. The technical challenges are immense. Designing equipment that can withstand these pressures while still functioning requires remarkable engineering. Until recent decades, we had better maps of the moon's surface than we did of our own ocean floor at these depths. Life in the abyss is sparse but persistent. The creatures here have evolved extreme adaptations to survive. Many are small, conserving energy in an environment where food is exceptionally scarce. Abyssal animals tend to have soft, gelatinous bodies with minimal bone structure. Hard bones and shells require calcium, and they require energy to build and maintain. In the abyss, organisms have shed unnecessary weight and structure. The seafloor at these depths is covered in fine sediment, the accumulated remains of countless organisms that died in the upper zones and slowly drifted down over thousands of years. This ooze, as scientists call it, is several meters thick in many places. It's composed primarily of microscopic shells and skeletons. Sea cucumbers crawl across this muddy bottom, processing the sediment for any organic material they can extract. They're like earthworms of the deep sea, recycling nutrients that would otherwise be locked away forever. Brittle stars, relatives of sea stars, wave their spindly arms to catch any particles drifting by. Amphipods, small shrimp-like crustaceans, scurry across the bottom searching for food. And occasionally, larger predators appear. The Dumbo octopus, named for its ear-like fins that resemble the Disney character's ears, hovers just above the bottom, hunting for prey. Its gelatinous body allows it to withstand the extreme pressure. The species living in the abyss are different from those found at shallower depths, yet they're not completely isolated. Genetic studies have shown that some species have close relatives living in trenches thousands of miles away, suggesting that at some point in their evolutionary history, they were able to disperse across great distances, possibly traveling along the seafloor or riding deep ocean currents. One fascinating feature of the abyss is the presence of hydrothermal vents in some areas. These underwater geysers occur where seawater seeps down through cracks in the ocean floor, gets heated by magma below, and then shoots back up, sometimes at temperatures exceeding 400 degrees Celsius. The water is rich in minerals and chemicals, and despite the extreme conditions, these vents support thriving communities of life. Tube worms, clams, and specialized bacteria cluster around the vents, creating oases of abundance in the otherwise barren abyss. These ecosystems don't rely on sunlight at all. They're powered by chemical energy from the Earth itself. At 6,000 meters, nearly 20,000 feet or almost 4 miles down, we cross into the hadal zone. Also called the hadopelagic zone, this is the deepest part of the ocean, found only in trenches. The name comes from Hades, the ancient Greek god of the underworld. It's a fitting name for this most extreme environment. The hadal zone encompasses all ocean depths below 6,000 meters, extending down to the deepest known point at nearly 11,000 meters. This zone exists only in long, narrow, V-shaped trenches scattered across the ocean floor. There are 46 hadal habitats worldwide, accounting for less than 1/4% of the world's seafloor. Yet these trenches contain more than 40% of the ocean's total depth range. Most hadal habitats are found in the Pacific Ocean, including the Mariana, Tonga, Philippine, and Kermadec trenches. The pressure in the hadal zone is almost beyond comprehension. At 6,000 meters, you're experiencing 600 atmospheres of pressure, roughly 4.5 tons per square inch. At the bottom of the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the Mariana Trench at nearly 11,000 meters, the pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. That's over 8 tons per square inch, or more than 16,000 pounds per square inch. Imagine an elephant standing on your thumb. Now imagine 50 elephants standing on your thumb. That gives you a sense of the force pressing in from all directions. The temperature remains consistently cold, typically between 1 and 4 degrees Celsius, just above freezing. The water here is some of the coldest in the ocean, despite being closer to the Earth's hot interior. The darkness is complete and unbroken except for rare bioluminescent flashes. And the food supply is minimal, consisting only of the small amount of organic matter that manages to drift all the way down from the surface, along with occasional larger bonanzas like whale carcasses. For decades, scientists believed complex life couldn't exist at these depths. The pressure seemed too extreme, the conditions too harsh. The first hint that this assumption was wrong came in 1960, when the bathyscaphe Trias descended to Challenger Deep. Through the small porthole, oceanographer Jacques Picard and Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh reported seeing what appeared to be a flat fish swimming along the bottom. The scientific community was skeptical. Some suggested it might have been a sea cucumber, not a fish. But the sighting raised tantalizing questions. In subsequent decades, as technology improved, scientists sent increasingly sophisticated equipment into the trenches. What they found was remarkable. Not only does life exist in the hadal zone, but in some trenches, it's surprisingly abundant. In 2024, researchers aboard the Chinese submersible Fendouz descended into the Mariana Trench 23 times and discovered thousands of worms and mollusks at depths ranging from 2,500 meters to over 9,000 meters. This represented the deepest colony of creatures ever observed on the hadal seafloor. Amphipods are particularly common in hadal trenches. These small crustaceans, typically less than a centimeter long in shallow waters, grow to giant sizes in the hadal zone. Some hadal amphipods reach 30 centimeters long, 20 times larger than their shallow water cousins. They swarm over any food that reaches the bottom, consuming it with remarkable speed. Scientists have used cameras with bait to observe hadal amphipods, and within hours, hundreds or thousands of them appear, covering the bait completely. The hadal zone represents one of Earth's final frontiers. Less than 5% of the ocean has been explored, and the hadal zone is the least explored region of all. Each expedition reveals new species and challenges our understanding of life's limits. The creatures living in the hadal zone have evolved extraordinary adaptations to survive conditions that would instantly kill most surface organisms. Let's examine some of these remarkable animals and the strategies they use to thrive in this extreme environment. The hadal snailfish holds the distinction of being the deepest known vertebrate. The Mariana snailfish, Pseudoliparus swirii, has been filmed at depths exceeding 8,000 meters in the Mariana Trench. These fish have translucent, gelatinous skin and lack scales. Their bodies are soft and somewhat shapeless, like living jellies. This might seem like a weakness, but it's actually an adaptation to the extreme pressure. They don't have swim bladders, those gas-filled organs that help many fish control their depth. A swim bladder would be crushed immediately at these depths. Instead, hadal snailfish maintain neutral buoyancy through specialized fats in their tissues. Their bones are thin and incompletely hardened, reducing the energy needed to build and maintain a skeleton. Even their skulls are not fully closed, remaining somewhat flexible. Scientists studying the genetics of hadal snailfish discovered they have multiple copies of certain genes that appear crucial to their survival. One of these genes helps maintain the structure of their inner ear organs despite the extreme pressure. Another helps stabilize proteins in their cells, preventing the pressure from literally crushing the molecular machinery of life. Hadal snailfish have lost many genes related to vision. At these depths, where no sunlight penetrates and bioluminescence is rare, eyes are less useful than other senses. They've also lost genes related to circadian rhythms, the 24-hour biological clock that most surface organisms possess. Without sunlight to mark the passage of days, there is no selective advantage to maintaining these systems. Despite their strange appearance, hadal snailfish are effective predators, feeding on amphipods and other small crustaceans on the seafloor. Hadal grenadiers, fish related to cod, also inhabit these depths. They're bottom feeders with elongated bodies and tapering tails, earning them the nickname rat-tail fish. Like snailfish, they have reinforced skeletons to withstand the pressure. Their bones show increased ossification, a strengthening process that helps prevent them from being crushed. They're generalist predators, eating whatever they can find, including amphipods and other small prey. Sea cucumbers, those soft-bodied relatives of sea stars, are common in hadal trenches. They slowly crawl across the seafloor, processing sediment and extracting whatever organic material they can find. Their gelatinous bodies are well suited to the pressure. Some species found at hadal depths are unlike any seen in shallower waters, suggesting they've evolved in isolation within their particular trenches. Giant amphipods deserve special mention. These crustaceans, normally small in shallow waters, grow to impressive sizes in the hadal zone. Some species exceed 30 centimeters in length. How they survive the pressure remains partially mysterious. Scientists believe specialized biochemistry helps stabilize their cellular structures. They also possess specialized proteins that protect against pressure-induced damage. When food arrives in the form of a falling carcass, amphipods can detect it from great distances and converge rapidly, sometimes in enormous numbers. Perhaps most surprisingly, microorganisms thrive in hadal sediments. Bacteria and archaea, single-celled organisms that represent some of the most ancient forms of life on Earth, are abundant in the mud at the bottom of trenches. Some of these microbes have evolved unique enzymes that work at high pressure and low temperature. They process organic matter, breaking down complex molecules and recycling nutrients. Some can even digest cellulose from plant material, allowing them to consume terrestrial vegetation that washes into the ocean and sinks to the bottom. Now let's turn our attention to the Mariana Trench itself, both its physical characteristics and the powerful geological forces that created it. The Mariana Trench is located in the western Pacific Ocean, about 200 kilometers east of the Mariana Islands. It's crescent-shaped, stretching roughly 2,550 kilometers in length, over 1,500 miles. The average width is 69 kilometers, about 43 miles. But what makes it truly remarkable is its depth. The deepest point in the Mariana Trench, and indeed the deepest known point anywhere on Earth, is called Challenger Deep. It's named after the British Royal Navy ship HMS Challenger, which first sounded the area in 1875. Modern measurements place Challenger Deep at approximately 10,935 meters below sea level, or about 35,876 feet. That's just under 11 kilometers, or roughly 6.8 miles straight down. To grasp this depth, consider Mount Everest. The world's tallest mountain stands 8,848 meters above sea level. If you could somehow pick up Mount Everest and drop it into Challenger Deep, the peak would still be more than 2 kilometers underwater. There would be over a mile of water above the summit. The depth of the Mariana Trench is simply staggering. The trench formed through a geological process called subduction, one of the fundamental mechanisms of plate tectonics. Earth's outer layer, the crust and uppermost mantle together called the lithosphere, is broken into large pieces called tectonic plates. These plates float on the hotter, more fluid mantle below and slowly move relative to each other, typically at rates of a few centimeters per year. Where plates collide, dramatic things happen. The Mariana Trench marks the boundary between two plates, the massive Pacific Plate and the smaller Mariana Plate to the west. The Pacific Plate is moving northwest, pushing against the Mariana Plate. But here's the crucial detail. The oceanic crust forming the western edge of the Pacific Plate at this location is some of the oldest oceanic crust on Earth, up to 170 million years old. Old oceanic crust is cold and dense. It's had millions of years to cool and contract. This makes it heavy. When the dense Pacific Plate meets the less dense Mariana Plate, it doesn't just push against it. It dives beneath it, plunging down into the mantle in a process called subduction. The descending plate drags the seafloor down with it, creating a deep V-shaped trench where it bends and begins its descent. The Mariana Trench is that V-shaped scar, marking where one of Earth's great plates is being recycled back into the planet's interior. The subduction rate here is about 6 to 8 centimeters per year. That might not sound like much, but over millions of years, it means thousands of kilometers of oceanic crust have been consumed. The Pacific Plate is diving at a steep angle, descending almost vertically in some areas. This steep angle is partly due to the extreme density of the old, cold plate. It's so heavy that it essentially falls into the mantle under its own weight. As the Pacific Plate descends, it takes water with it, locked in the crystal structures of minerals in the rocks. As the plate goes deeper, increasing heat and pressure force this water out. The water rises into the overlying mantle wedge, lowering the melting point of the rock there. Magma forms and rises toward the surface, creating volcanoes. This volcanic activity built the Mariana Islands themselves, which lie just to the west of the trench. We've now completed our descent through the ocean zones, from the sunlit waters near the surface all the way down to the deepest point on Earth. It's a journey of nearly 11 kilometers through 5 distinct zones, each more extreme than the last. And throughout this journey, one theme emerges again and again. Life persists. Life adapts. Life finds a way. When the bathyscaphe Trieste reached Challenger Deep in 1960, Jacques Picard and Don Walsh spent only 20 minutes on the bottom. The descent took nearly 5 hours, and they had limited visibility through their small porthole. But even in that brief visit, they reported seeing signs of life. In the decades since, more sophisticated expeditions have confirmed what they glimpsed. The deepest parts of the ocean are not lifeless voids. They're ecosystems in their own right, hosting communities of organisms found nowhere else on Earth. Consider what these creatures endure. Pressure exceeding 1,000 atmospheres, equivalent to having 50 elephants standing on every square inch of your body. Temperatures hovering just above freezing. Complete darkness. Food arriving only sporadically, sometimes with months between meals. Yet hadal snailfish swim along the bottom, hunting for prey. Amphipods swarm in their thousands. Sea cucumbers process sediment. Bacteria and other microorganisms thrive in the mud. These organisms have had millions of years to adapt to conditions we find almost unimaginable. The study of hadal environments teaches us about the limits of life. By understanding how organisms survive in the Mariana Trench, scientists gain insights that extend far beyond the ocean. The proteins that help hadal creatures withstand extreme pressure might inform the development of new materials or pharmaceuticals. The microbes that thrive in these conditions could hold clues to how life first emerged on Earth billions of years ago, possibly in similar high-pressure environments near hydrothermal vents. Some scientists even speculate that if life exists elsewhere in our solar system, perhaps in the subsurface oceans of Jupiter's moon Europa or Saturn's moon Enceladus, it might resemble hadal zone organisms. The Mariana Trench also reminds us of our planet's dynamic nature. The same tectonic forces that created this 7-mile deep gash in the seafloor also build mountains, trigger earthquakes, and drive the rock cycle that renews Earth's surface. The subduction occurring at the Mariana Trench has been ongoing for millions of years and will continue for millions more. Vast sections of the Pacific Plate have already been consumed, pulled down into the mantle where they melt and eventually get recycled back to the surface through volcanic eruptions. The Pacific Plate you see today in maps is smaller than it was 50 million years ago, and it will be smaller still 50 million years from now. Human exploration of the hadal zone remains limited. Fewer than 30 people have descended to Challenger Deep. By comparison, more than 600 people have traveled to space. The technical challenges are immense. The isolation is complete. If something goes wrong at those depths, there is no possibility of rescue. Yet each expedition brings back new data, new samples, new images of this hidden world. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey to the deepest point on Earth. The ocean remains one of our planet's greatest mysteries, with more than 95% of it still unexplored. But piece by piece, dive by dive, we're learning its secrets. I hope tonight's exploration has given you a new appreciation for the remarkable diversity of life in our ocean and the powerful forces that shape our planet. Until next time, this is Wade Hadley, reminding you that even in the darkest depths, wonder awaits.